Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to episode 80 of The Knife Guy. If you are new to my channel or you just came out of some weird corner of the internet, you have no idea where you are, who I am. I'm a knife guy, knife enthusiast, knife enjoyer, knife user, knife collector, knife guy, knife enjoyer of many sorts. I don't know how many times I said the same thing over and over again. Anyways, we are all knife guys and gals in this super weird EDC and folding knife related or just knife related world in general. We all go down our own unique paths, but oftentimes those paths intersect and we experience a lot of the same stuff. And that's really what this series is all about. I like to pick knives up that are either mine, some of my generous viewers, and I like to flip them and just, kind of look at them a little bit while I talk about some of this stuff. Really cool. This is the... I always mix this one up, the name of it, but it's the Antimatter from Arcane Designs, and it's really, really cool. Check them out on Instagram. Very, very cool. It's actually sharp. It's a folding dagger that is sharp on both sides. Pretty cool. Really, not always are designs like this, actually functional, or ones that I would take out and use, but that's pretty cool. Anyways, so what are we talking about today? So, looking over a lot of stuff and, thinking about, like, everything that I've handled and my experience with it. And then a lot of, what I talk about, each week is really, it's something that happens that week, right? These Knife Guy episodes are recorded once a week. They are not massively recorded ahead of time like a lot of my other content. I have to, basically come up with something each week to talk about. And this week, I made a purchase that by the time you guys are seeing this, it will have probably arrived, but you won't see it until next week, because I planned on unboxing it on the weekend, but it's probably not going to get here until, at the earliest, like it's Friday my time. You guys are watching this on Sunday. Probably won't get here till tomorrow, and I don't record on Saturdays, so you won't see it until next week. But anyways, it's a knife that was very expensive and that I reviewed a long time ago. I haven't told anybody what I bought yet. Literally nobody. It's a knife that I personally loved, but it had some flaws. It had some awkwardness. It had some weirdness, right? And I think I ended the video saying this is a high quality, knife. It's just not. It's just plain and simple. It's not going to be for everybody, right? And I've been hovering around this knife for months. It's not a new knife. It's been around for a while. Hovering around it for months, and I kept coming back to it, looking at pictures at it, right? Looking at pictures of it. And I was like, oh, that part bothered me, and that part's not. And I started to realize that I was kind of like zeroing in on these spots that I considered functional flaws, but I appreciated for their basically just the parts of the knife that just made it complete aesthetically, and it had its own characteristics, right? It's just like people, right? We all have, what we consider personally as flaw. Like, I've got parts of myself that I consider flaws, right? Now, I mean, however you want to put it, physically, mentally, emotionally, right? However you want to, say that. Parts that I consider flaws myself, and then people, outwardly, however they feel about that is different. Everybody has their own perspective of themselves and others, right? But it makes us up, whether we like it or not, it makes us who we are, right? And the same thing goes for knives, right? Knives have certain characteristics, and it makes them what they are, right? I mean, it makes them what they're known for. Here's a good example of something that I consider a flaw, but I also consider it like a really important part of what makes an XM18 an XM18. The flipper tab is this pointy hook-shaped thing, and it's not comfortable to engage, and then the landing zone is this really sharp jimping back here, right? People have been calling to have that changed for so long. Here's the funny thing. I realized looking at this that if they suddenly changed the flipper tab in this area back here, it would be better, right? It would. But there would always be a part of me that just remembered the classic XM18 for what it was originally. And again, the XM18 has been changed in a number of ways, right? The detent's been made better. They've added the steel lock bar insert. They've added the tri-weight pivot system, right? But it's largely remained the same thing. So if they made like a huge change to the shape of it, part of me would be like, I kind of just miss how the old flipper tab looked and how the jimping looked on the back, because it looks nice. It doesn't feel nice, but it looks nice, and I'll always appreciate it. It's just, That's when I think XM18. That's just what it is, right? It's like the Chavez knives with the skull clips. Yeah, they could make that. They could make a clip that was just boring and really functional, right? They could make it better. But then that clip wouldn't be on it anymore. That clip that like made you know, and it still look like a Chavez, but that huge like identifiable characteristic that's very polarizing. Some people love it and some people hate it, but then it just wouldn't be there. And I don't know. I kind of like the quirkiness of some of these designs. Another great example is, you know, the Boker Kalashnikov has these, like, it's like you have to put your fingers right here. And we have to have this bacon clip on the thing, right? And on the XXL, they made the handle to where it's like it doesn't force your fingers into a perfect spot. And that's better, right? And I don't know if the pocket clip's the same or not. I can't remember. But I just remember thinking, like, this is better, but it just looks less like the original, you know. Just makes me appreciate, I guess, the quirkiness of the original Kalashnikov, right? So, and there's a lot of things. I mean, I could continue to point out examples. Pocket clip on this guy. Pocket clip on a Medford Praetorian tie, right? Little things. Sometimes, and in the case of this knife that I purchased, ironically, I ended up purchasing it because I was like, I just don't, it's not that, just that I don't care, but I kind of appreciate the awkwardness of these weird elements of the design. They simply are there. They're just part of the design, and oddly enough, I've come to just accept it and appreciate it for that. So I went ahead and bought it, and I'm so excited. I mean, I don't make, you know, big knife purchases super often. I mean, maybe so. Like anybody, you could argue with me and be like, you do that like once a month. So maybe I do, right? But I on this channel, I constantly am on this like hypothetical quest for the ultimate knife with like every last little thing that I want. And here recently, the 8020, the Andrew Demko 8020 in full titanium is like, it's one of the closest things in existence that's come to Excalibur. Truthfully, technically, you know, after the Shaman here gets textured, it'll be more by definition Excalibur than that guy. But even after I get it textured, honestly, guys, I'm not gonna. Oh, there's a lot of pocket lint under that. I'm still not gonna love it as much as I love the 8020, right? The pocket clip on this guy's better. The scales are contoured, right? It has almost every, after it's textured and after, well, a version of the Shaman comes out with a different steel, because honestly, that's part of the equation too. Let's say I get all that, I'm still not going to like it, even though it is by my own definition. That's going to make a lot of people mad too, because that's like this is an acquirable, like people who really take what I say seriously. I appreciate that, but this is a much easier acquisition than this guy, right? Even after I finish that, it's going to be basically ultimate, but I still am going to like that guy more. Why I don't know. This thing has its own thing going on, right? I didn't have to build this. It's got the shark lock, and for whatever reason, I just like it a little bit better. I don't like the pocket clip nearly as much on this guy versus that guy, and these scales aren't contoured, but I just appreciate it for what it is. The form that it takes, the shape that it takes, right? Just the extra elements on there. Little things like the pivot looking like the cap of a, like a 45 shell. I just like that, right? The positioning of the hole, the shape of the hole, thumb studs, right? Those little things. I don't necessarily need thumb studs in this guy, but I just like, it's a combination of all those things. It's characteristics, it's unique characteristics, right? Even if they are not perfect by my own standards, I can't explain. I just like it more. I just appreciate it for what it is. So it's odd from my perspective as a reviewer who's constantly criticizing something like, this should be made different, this should be made. And it's like, I always wonder how often it is when somebody who knows what they're doing, like a knife, somebody who's been not only making, like somebody who makes knives, which I don't do at all. I can't. I don't know how to do that. Somebody who's been a part of this knife world substantially longer than me, right? And they create something. I wonder how often it is that they go, Yeah, it would be better to do it like this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put my own flair in there because I'm not necessarily trying to make like the ultimate, you know, high speed, low drag, like absolute most to fit this and that. Like they're just putting their own element in there, and they're like, yeah, it could be better, but I like it this way because it gives it character, right? I bet that happens all the time, because if it didn't, right, and I'm sure there are a lot of knife makers out there, you know, just going for the most like absolutely ultimate, like ease of disassembly, perfect behind the edge, best blade steel for the scenarios that it was designed to be used for, right? Most ergonomic handle shape. Like they're constantly striving for that, for absolute perfection amidst the vast majority of the enthusiast knife community, which is largely my audience, I guess, and maybe a lot of the people wanting to spend a lot of money on knives from makers like that. I'm sure there are, but I'm sure there are way more who are just doing whatever they feel like, you know, they enjoy. They're trying to please an audience. Obviously, they are trying to a lot of times build a company or grow, right, their brand or whatever. But just trying to appeal to different people for different reasons. Not everybody is necessarily after the ultimate perfect tool, right? Everybody has their own set of aesthetic, right, things that I enjoy things that are both aesthetically pleasing and functional at the same time, right? And that's kind of a teeter-totter. You can have more or less of that. It's getting really, really rambly, but I mean, ultimately, it's pretty simple here. I mean, there's a lot of different forms of good, right? Good, better, perfect, whatever you want to go. There's a lot of different forms that can take, right? But if everything, like, let's say this would never happen, but let's just say hypothetically that all of a sudden every knife maker in existence was attempting to create a knife based on my own personal list, like Metal Complex's personal list of, you know, what I like and don't like about knives and what form they should take and what materials they should be. Let's say that they did it. Essentially, I would just have a whole bunch of slightly varying, not like we'd have knives of different size, like just slight variances in size and weight, slight variances in handle shape and the type of hardware and the overall look, and it would just be this sea of, and on top of that, I like the monochromatic stuff, you know, like the full tie XM18 and the 8020 and the Shaman here. It's all stone washed. That's like what I like. Can you imagine the boring sea of literal gray that would create, right? Sometimes something that part of the community or most of the community might consider to be a flaw, sometimes it just gives a knife an unmistakable characteristic that we end up appreciating it for, right? Now the jimping thing and the flipper tab on a Hinderer, like Hinderer fans are all going to be like, it's no big deal. I kind of like, but people who have never handled one would be like, I don't want that, you know. But the Chavez clip is certainly a good example of that, right? I think it's actually, a lot of people are like, get rid of that clip and make something better. But at this point, as long as that thing's been around, I wish I had one here to come. I almost bought one the other day, and I didn't because I bought this other thing. But I was thinking about that clip. I think it's a bad move, no matter what your feelings are about that pocket clip. I think it's actually a bad move if he removes it or stops doing it, right? I mean, people talk about that knife in both positive and negative light because it has a striking clip that is an immediately identifiable characteristic, right? People either love it or they hate it, but they're talking about it. And people are constantly talking about it on Instagram, on different, you know, in the forums, on YouTube, right? It's like immediately, you know, whether you love it or hate it, you know, and that's good, you know, for the Chavez brand because people are talking about it, right? If a design is too boring or too perfect, then people just won't. They'll be like, "Yep, it's great," and then they just stop talking about it as much. I think polarization with designs is super important, right? Things that, you know, might be perceived as flaws by some people or just accepted or even appreciated. I think all of that's really, really important, right? So a lot of complications and issues with creating a design. I actually talked with the designer behind this, super nice guy. A lot of complications and issues, understandably, not that I have ever done this, I'm turning the exposure up a little bit, with a folding dagger. Way more complications, right? He was talking about, you know, with a folding knife that's not sharp on both sides, or with another folding knife that's not sharp on both sides, you can change the blade shape pretty easily, right? But changing the blade shape on this guy, there's so much more to consider because the entire design has to be symmetrical and fit into the handle, right? This handle is really designed to house this specific blade shape. So if you wanted to change this to like a double tanto, like a tanto dagger, kind of like the Spartan blade shape on like the OTF, on the Microtech OTFs, or the Microtech Ultratech Spartan, then he's got a problem. He's got a whole bunch of stuff to work out. Exactly what angle can he achieve that while still keeping it in the handle, right? Is it all going to work? Is the blade going to look good with the back of the handle? Maybe. It kind of is already, you know, like that. I mean, it actually would be kind of cool, but there's a lot more to work out, right? Some people would consider that to be an unnecessary thing or a flaw or a hindrance or something they don't care about, right? This or that, but you know, maybe it would appeal to some people, maybe it wouldn't. You know, if this design was hovering around out there for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they changed it or gave it a different form, right? And they stopped making this original version, then you're going to have some people like, oh, neat. And then a lot of people, you know, who appreciated it or identified this knife as its original design would kind of be like, even if you did make it better by some, I'm not saying that changing that to a double tanto would make it better. I'm just giving you an example of an evolution that could take place over a long period of time that might have this effect. All right, the people who appreciated it for its original design and identified it as that original design, despite the new one perhaps being an upgrade or improvement, it might take away from the original essence of it, right? Sometimes the essence of some of these knives are odd little things that some people consider flaws, right? Little ridiculous things. It's like, I don't need the glass breaker on a Microtech OTF. And somebody told me, they're like, you can just like take that off, and there's a company who just makes a screw that you can put on there, and then you don't have to deal with it at all. And I was like, oh, cool. So then I looked that up, and I was like, I wonder if I can find a picture of one with just the screw and not the glass breaker. Me personally, as much as I both don't need the glass breaker and find it kind of unsightly, I saw a picture of one with the screw and without the glass breaker, and I was like, I don't like that. It makes me feel like if I do that, I've taken away some really, you know, important characteristic of the Combat Troodon. It's like it's not whole without that stupid thing that I don't need and find kind of annoying. Right? So I just didn't do it. I just left it on there. I contradict myself all the time as a reviewer, right? Things that would hypothetically be more optimal for the design. And then let's say I have an opportunity to make that occur, and then ironically choose not to do it because it's not the same as it was, as its true form, right? It's funny. It's weird. We do that with a lot of stuff. It's not just knives. I do that with a lot of stuff. I got a weird thing about vehicles, actually, too. I can't stand seeing, like, for example, here's something that, this doesn't relate perfectly. I'm just going to gripe at you guys for a little bit. Somebody the other day had a Hellcat Challenger driving down the street with 22-inch rims. Why would you do that? Why? That made me so mad. How dare you... How dare you remove the Hellcat rims, the ones that are actually designed to function with the car, and put gigantic 22-inch rims? That was just infuriating to me. It looked so stupid. And the car factually cannot perform the same way. Even though, actually, what was it? No, it couldn't have been 22. It must have been 24-inch rims. The tires were like this thin, because I think you can get, what are they on the Hellcat? 20-inch or something like that? Anyways, you go beyond, right? You put different tires on there and different rims, and you take away from a lot of the performance aspects of the vehicle. The rims that are that big, the car's not going to be able to perform the way that it was, you know, designed to. And it took away from the look. Like, that person was convinced that their Hellcat now looked better, and it was just awful. It was just terrible, right? I think little things like modifying the exhaust, right, if you make little changes here and there. But when people, like, you know, take a beautiful design, right? Like the lines on a Corvette already look good from the factory. And then you see, like, people will pay thousands of dollars for body kits that totally change the way the car looks. And it's like, oh, no, you've ruined the essence of the Corvette. Now it just looks like a freaking vacuum cleaner. You know, it just looks awful. Oh, that's me. That's just me. Sometimes it's like I want to enjoy, you know, it's okay to make something your own. I'm not saying like, don't do that because I said not to do it because it bothers me. Meh, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, me personally, I like to enjoy, for the most part, what the thing was originally, or if I am going to change parts, like on a Hinderer, I really appreciate that Hinderer offers factory custom parts so that I still get that Hinderer essence, right? Sometimes I just want to appreciate it for what it originally was, and I've had little minor things that don't necessarily take away from the essence of the design, right? Like if it's a car, right? If you want to change the exhaust or something like that, or, you know, maybe you want to, you know, we put a little RT badge on the front of the Durango because it bothered me. The Durango is the other vehicle that we drive is an RT Durango, and it bothered me that it said Dodge 2 on the front instead of RT in the grill. I didn't want that there. I wanted it to say RT because that's what it was. Little things like that, but I would never like buy a body kit and different rims for the thing because I like how they looked originally, right? People who own big trucks will disagree with me because they change the tires. They put a lift kit on it, change the tires, change the rims, right? I don't know. I guess it's different. Why are we talking about vehicles now? I don't know. If you've never watched Knife Guy, this is very different from the other content on my channel. It's just rambling. Hope this is translating correctly. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying, right? There's not really much to take away from this. There's not really a lesson to be learned. Basically, sometimes things that are slightly bothersome add unique characteristics to knives, and I would prefer that they not be changed, even if a change could actually make the design better, because that's how my brain works. That was the entire episode in a nutshell. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it today. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.